in the events of your life. Did you know that?
Amen.
And so the message today is titled, It's About Time, Ming. And I want you to read with me from Matthew chapter 9. We're starting at verse number 14, and you can read in your Bible or read in your digital device. It's on the screen too. I just really encourage you to just be open to interacting with God's holy word this morning. Let it speak to your life. Then John's disciples came and asked him, "How is it that we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast?" John's disciples ask a how question. How? And really, let's capture the spirit of what they're really saying. Here's how we would say it. How come? How come we fast and the Pharisees, they fast, but your disciples don't fast? Now, what's up? And Jesus answered their question with a question. They say, "How come?" And he says, "How come?" Now, he doesn't really say that, not literally, but in a sense he does, because at verse number 15 we read his reply. Jesus answered, "How can the guests of the bridegroom mourn while he is with them?" So, and go ahead and put that verse up there. He's saying, how come? He could have said it this way. How come wedding guests are so happy? So you want to know, how come we don't fast? Or how come your disciples don't fast? Well, how come wedding guests are so happy? That's the real question. How can the guests of the bridegroom mourn while he is with them? The time will come when the bridegroom will be taken away from them, and then they will fast. Now, I want you to listen to these 4 words in verse 15. These are words that indicate time. A space in time. Punctuality, precision. I'm going to highlight them for you. Each one of them has to do with time. Chronological time. And I want you to think about the nowness of these 4 words. The words are while, time, when, and then. And actually they are our 4 points today. Point number 1, while. The word is while, and I'm saying it this way. Meanwhile, back at the ranch. Many of you in this room have heard that phrase. Some of you have never heard that phrase in your life. Some of you have used that phrase, and you use it in conversation to transition to something else, but you don't even know where it came from or why you say that. And that's okay, because that's kind of how phrases work. That's really how languages work. We incorporate things, and we speak things, and we say things. And so, but here's the story behind that phrase, meanwhile back at the ranch. Do you know, it comes originally from the silent movies. In the day before the talkies, in the day when they didn't have audio in the movies, they would just have the scene and then maybe some music playing, and when it would come to a transition point, a phrase would come up on the screen that tells them, now we're going to another scene. One of those phrases was, meanwhile back at the ranch. And it was because a lot of the early silent movies were westerns. And so they would have a scene in the village, you know, and kind of on the boardwalk of the little old western town, and then it would go, meanwhile back at the ranch, and then it would show a fighting scene out at the ranch. That's how that phrase got started. Later on, it was used in a lot of western movies for sure, and especially the TV show Bonanza. But so, this morning, whenever you hear me say, meanwhile back at the ranch, I want you to think scene change, new story, new setting. Number 2, time. Number 2 is time. It's about timing. Not only is that the title of the message, but this is also point number 2. Many Bible teachers miss something when they think that this scripture is only about old systems versus new systems. When they read about, especially this next verse, and I want you to look at it with me, but it's not only about old systems and new systems, it's about timing. So verse 16 says, no one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth. And let's go ahead with that next verse. No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment. For the patch will pull away from the garment, making the tear worse. Neither do people pour new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the skins will burst. The wine will run out and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved. Old clothes are already shrunk because they've been washed a lot of times. And even with our modern washing machines, it's not different than ancient times. When you wash the garments, they would shrink. If you try to put a new piece of patchwork over a hole on an old garment, what happens is when you wash it, the patch shrinks and it tears away, and it actually makes the hole become worse. New wine goes into new wineskins. When wine ferments, the yeast eats the sugars in the grape juice and it produces a gas, carbon dioxide. And so that's the fermentation process. And when this happens, if it's an old wineskin that has already been stretched, now when this new wine is fermenting, it will cause the old wineskin to burst. So the timing is you need to keep the new wine with new wineskins and let them age together. So a lot of scholars say, this scripture, it's about old systems and new systems. Jesus is talking about the Old Testament and the New Testament. He's talking about the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. And that is true. And by the way, I'm not discrediting that. Jesus is the very fulfillment of the Old Testament law, and He does it without undoing any of the law, but fulfilling the law. But this scripture is not only about that. It's also about perfect timing. You're going to see it in these stories this morning, how Jesus operates in a perfect timetable. That's the context for Matthew chapter 9, 10, and 11. Matthew is driving home the fact that Jesus is really concerned about timing in matters. Jesus wants to make sure to accomplish precise, perfect timing for the events of your life. The right timing means it's a right match. It means it's at the same time. There's a fit. The new wine is in the new container and they age together. The patch is the same age as the garment. The timing is right. It's a match. Old clothes, old patch. Old wine, old wineskins. New wine, new wineskins. Jesus is very concerned about timing in matters. Jesus wants to make sure He accomplishes the perfect, precise timing for the events of your life. Number 3, winning, not whining. When? Every parent knows what whining is. There's something weird that happens along about grades 4, 5, 6, 7. Sometimes a little earlier, sometimes a little later. Why? Any of you parents ever heard that phrase? Yeah. And by the way, you know, all of us, when we were kids, we vowed, I'm never going to do what my mom and dad do. Ever. I tell them, why does it have to be this way? And they just don't have an answer, and all they can come up with is, because I said so. When I become a dad, I'm never going to say, because I said so. But then you just wait. Why this and why that? When? And why does it have to be that way? Because I said so. And sometimes people whine about spiritual matters. Why do they get to do that and not me? Why do they not fast and I fast a lot? But don't get caught up in whining when Jesus is winning. Okay? And so number 4, then. That's the 4th word. It's a then thing. Then. Then and then are two of possibly the two most incorrectly used words in English grammar. Then is about timing. Then is about comparison. And so think about it. The word then is comparison. I would rather have pizza than hamburgers. There's nothing I love more than a good novel. That's comparing. But the word then is timing. I went to the movies. Then I got ice cream. I had a cup of coffee. Then I went to prayer. Can anyone say amen? See, then is about timing. So don't get caught up using then in spiritual matters. Don't get caught up comparing ourselves with others. Don't get caught up in this game of comparing New Testament to Old Testament, comparing Old Covenant and New Covenant. There's more to life than that. Don't get caught up in comparing, well, I think I would rather be Jesus' disciple than John's disciples or the Pharisees. It's not about that. Instead, it's a timing thing. When Jesus touches a life, then become a minister. Get involved in a ministry. So, timing in matters. I've been amazed as our family, and you guys have walked this journey with us. We're in year 7 of a journey with our older son, Zach, being in prison. And it is a family journey. It's not just Zach, but it's myself and Stephanie and Nick and Zach. It's a family journey, and the broader, bigger family. It's a journey we're on. I've been amazed how God has been so faithful in timing throughout this journey. He has shown us different times how He is perfectly in control of events. A couple of, for instances, in the early days of this journey when I was still substitute teaching, I remember thinking more than once this happened. There's one specific particular day I was going to be substitute teaching for an 8th grade class. It was a science class. And the way it works, you never know what the schedule is going to be. You just show up, you get there early enough to find the schedule on the teacher's desk. You don't know when lunch is going to be. You know you'll get a break at some point in the day, but you don't know when that's going to be. And on that particular day, I really needed to just hear my son's voice. I needed to hear Zach's voice. I was concerned about something in his life, something that he was facing. And I remember praying, oh Lord, please somehow just work it out. I just need to talk with him today. But I needed to work, and I went to the desk and I look at the schedule, and it's laid out, and the break happens at this time and lunch is at that time, and all day long teaching and preparing lessons and interacting with students, and then finally, take them and deliver them to their lunchroom and go by the teacher's lounge and pick up my little lunch and come back and set it on the desk and open it up and take out my sandwich and some fruit and the drink and set it there, and ding, the phone rings. It was perfect timing. It was the only time I would have been able to talk to him the entire day, and there I had a 15-minute conversation with Zach. I could tell you at least a half dozen times where that exact thing happened, where I was teaching and I couldn't have talked at any other time except a little window in the morning or in the afternoon, and that precise thing happened. God's concerned about timing. Our family has experienced, I'm convinced, a miracle. The beginning of this year, when Nick was in Europe, he was in Italy. Europe was locked down. Italy is one of the strongest, it was the hardest hit of the European nations for a long stretch. It was the hotbed of the world. I don't have to tell you that. It was rough. And as this year began, we knew that Nick was going into the Air Force, and we didn't know when. It could be quick, it could be a long time. He was in the delayed entry program, had already signed in. And then Zach, the prison here in the States, it was closed down, no visitors. We hadn't been there since March of 2020. And during that setting, with Zach in prison and Nick in Italy, and knowing that he's going into the Air Force, it was really important to me. I just prayed, oh God, I want our family to have time together before Nick goes in the Air Force. I'm asking you, and I don't know how it could possibly happen, but I'm asking you to let our family have 7 visits this summer. Let it be the case that Nick is with us through the summer and into the fall. Let it be the case that the prison opens back up. And I don't know how it's going to happen, but I am asking you, it's important to me. Let us have 7 visits as a family. The very week that Nick came home was the very week that the prisons opened up.
Praise God.
Yesterday we had visit number 6 together.
Wow.
If it goes well, we might be able to have 8 or possibly 9. I mean, God answered prayer. God is concerned about timing in matters. And so, if you're looking at Matthew 9 and you're reading this scripture, there is a great explanation of what's going on that I found, and I would point you to it. It's the Jesus Film Project. If you get a chance to just read what they have written on Matthew chapter 9, they do a wonderful job of laying it out. And so, while John the Baptist was in prison, remember John had called out Herod and he got put in prison. His disciples would come back and give him reports about what Jesus was doing. And so, these reports must have been troubling to John the Baptist, because Jesus did things a little bit differently than John would have done them. John had certain expectations, but Jesus wasn't quite doing it the same way that John thought it ought to be done. And so eventually John would send his disciples to Jesus and ask him, hey, are you the guy or not? I mean, should we be looking for somebody else? And actually that happens just a couple of chapters later, Matthew chapter 11. These same disciples that are questioning, they come back and they're saying, hey, John sent us to just find out, are you the Messiah or are you not? We're not clear on this. And when that happened, Jesus healed a lame man and a blind man and cast out a demon. And he says, go back and tell John what you just saw. By their fruit you will know them. And so, but there was a lot of concern. Now Jesus basically here in Matthew chapter 9, when the disciples of John come and say to him, why do we fast? And the Pharisees, they fast, but your disciples, they don't fast. Jesus says, like the preacher in Ecclesiastes, there is a time for everything under the sun. There is a timing and a reason. And he says a wedding celebration is not a time for fasting. They've got the bridegroom with them right now. Trust me, they'll be doing some fasting later on. But this is a celebration time. This is not a time for mourning. Jesus was making a very specific point to John the Baptist. He was here to do something totally new. If John, or anyone else for that matter, tried to make sense of it through a lens of old expectations and regulations, they would miss the amazing thing that was happening. Through Jesus, God was redeeming the entire world to Himself. And if people expected that to look familiar to what God had done before, then they wouldn't understand. So, I want you to keep our 4 power words in mind as we look at the next 4 stories immediately after this text. Remember the words again. While, meanwhile back at the ranch. Time. It's about timing. When, winning, not whining. And then, it's a then thing. So here's the first story. It's verse number 18. It's the next slide. While he was saying this, okay, meanwhile, back at the ranch, scene change, transition. While he was saying this, a synagogue leader came and knelt before him and said, my daughter has just died. But come and put your hand on her and she will live. Jesus got up with him, and so did his disciples. Now, story 2 interrupts the first story. Verse 20, we read it right here. It says, just then, meanwhile, back at the ranch, scene change, transition, just then, a woman who had been baptized, who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak. And she said to herself, if I only touch his cloak, I will be healed. So Jesus now has 2 people kneeling at his feet. One is Jairus, the synagogue ruler. His daughter has died. And he comes and kneels at his feet, begging him. And Jesus says, okay, I'll take care of it. And just as they turn to go, he feels something tugging at the hem of his garment. And this lady, she's touching the hem of his garment. She's kneeling too. Listen to what Ray Vander Laan teaches about this. As a Jewish rabbi, Jesus probably wore tassels on the end of his garment. That was because of Numbers chapter 15. You are to make tassels on the corners of your garments, and you will remember the commands of the Lord. So later on in Jewish history, rabbis wore that prayer shawl. It became more developed, and so they called it the talit. And the tassels were incorporated into the prayer shawl. The tassels were made so that they had 5 knots in the end of each tassel. The 5 knots represented the first 5 books of the Bible. The Pentateuch, Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. In between the 5 knots, there were 4 spaces. To them, this represented the name of God. the letters for his name. Yod, He, Vav, He. Yahweh. And the ropes were made of 613 strands. One strand for each of the commandments in Torah. And so, all of this comes together in a beautiful way when Ezekiel prophesies, when the Messiah comes, he will come with healing in his wings. But some translations say, he will come with healing in his tassels. And this woman got down on her knees and grabbed the hem of his garment. She grabbed the tassel. She latched hold of the thing that says to her, I believe this is the Messiah. And so what happens? Verse 27. Verse 22. Jesus turned and saw her. He says, take heart, daughter. Your faith has healed you. And the woman was healed at that moment. It's a then thing. It's about timing. It's about timing. Look at verse 23. When, see that when, timing again. Whenning, not whining. Jesus entered the synagogue leader's house. So okay, back at the ranch, another scene transition. When Jesus entered the synagogue leader's house and saw the noisy crowd and people playing pipes, he said, go away, the girl is not dead but asleep. But they laughed at him. They're like, you're kidding, this girl's dead. Don't you know she's dead? That's why they hired all of us to come mourn and make sad music. You're out of your mind. The girl's asleep. No, she's dead. But look at verse 25. After, that's timing, after the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took the girl by the hand, and she got up. And verse 26 says, news of this spread throughout all that region. That's the theme of Matthew chapter 9. The timing of a miracle. News spreads. The good news spreads. And then look at the next story. Story number 3 is at verse 27. As Jesus went on from there, meanwhile back at the ranch, are you following the transition points? Because it's key to this story. First, he's got this. First he's telling them there's an important timing with wine going into the wineskins. The patch needs to match the hole, and he gets interrupted. He gets interrupted by Jairus coming, and he's saying, "My daughter just died. I'll go and heal her. Let's go heal her." But he gets interrupted by a lady who grabs his tassel. And he says, "Daughter, your faith has healed you." Then he goes and he heals the dead girl, raises her up. But when Jesus, and then immediately after the crowd, news spreads. But verse 27, Jesus went out from there and 2 blind men followed him. The timing is incredibly important. They're calling out, "Have mercy on us, son of David." Verse 28, when he had gone indoors, that's timing, that's a scene change. The blind men came to him, and he asked them, "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" "Yes, Lord," they replied. Look at verse 29. Then, timing, right then, at this moment, he touched their eyes and said, "According to your faith, let it be done to you." And their sight was restored. Jesus warned them sternly, "See that no one knows about this." But they went out and spread the news about him all over that region. Timing of a miracle. The good news is spread. The good news is spreading. Watch this. Last story. Story number 4, verse 32. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, transition, new scene. While they were going out, a man who was demon-possessed and could not talk was brought to Jesus. And when, timing, when, not whining, when the demon was driven out, the man who had been mute spoke, and the crowd was amazed and said, "Nothing like this has ever happened in Israel." And the good news continues to spread. Perfect timing, miracle after miracle. But there's always a sour face in the crowd. The Pharisees said it's by the prince of demons that he drives out demons. Jesus went all through the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness, every one of them. Verse 36, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. 37, then he said to his disciples, catch the when, then. It's the cause and effect. When he saw the crowd, he's moved with compassion. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send workers into his harvest field. We believe that Jesus still works the same miracles today that he worked back then. We believe that God is a miracle-working, healing God. And it is not so that individuals can get credit, but it is for the sole express purpose that Jesus gets all of the glory. When Jesus does the healing, then miracles take place, and the good news causes rejoicing, and the good news, the euangelion, the Greek word euangelion, good news, it's where we get evangelism, it's where we get the word gospel. The good news spreads. Just this morning, mi hermano Carlos told me a fantastic miracle. I'm just going to share in essence what he told me. Last year, we prayed because there was mention from the doctor of prostate cancer and his numbers were climbing. We prayed and we believed for healing in the name of Jesus. And this last week, he went to the doctor and the doctor did the test. And he said, are you ready to hear the number? Yes. He said, your number is 0. It has gone down to 0. Actually, the doctor had said, it's lower than 0. I mean, I don't even know how that's possible. There are undeniable miracles when we surrender to him. And it is all for the purpose of expanding the kingdom. So, I'm believing that God's going to give us some miracles. Here's what I want you to take away today. The takeaway is this. Pay attention to God's scene changes in your life. Are you experiencing a scene change in your life? Don't let that throw you. Wait a minute. What's going on, God? This doesn't look familiar to me. Don't let that throw you. Pay attention. And be alert to his timing in matters. Wait for his when without whining. Amen? No whiners in God's kingdom. Wait for his when without whining. And then act in faith when he moves. I want to invite our musicians to come back. And I also want to ask our prayer team to come.